Wholeness and balance vibration to everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to the 2012 show. Today is one of those amazing days. You're really going to get some expansion out of this conversation. I'm so expanded. I don't care how many times I have to talk about the same thing that I'm going to discuss today until it gets perfected. I'm just going to keep doing it. And so I just want that to be the tone of today's conversation, because I've stumbled upon something and I've picked myself up, and I've realized that this becomes the most major thing, and it just makes so much sense. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today, is the origin of language, symbols, and speech, which of course is the title of today's show. Wow, where do we really begin? Of course, I was on last night with Dan Winter and Santos Bonacci. We got into a really decent roundtable conversation, and we just didn't have enough time, but some things were coming up that definitely need to be addressed. So I really wanted to use today's conversation as a springboard to finish a lot of the conclusions of things, meaning that to gain a foundation, you have to agree on certain things, like, okay, we're on Earth. That's making a conclusion about something, or, okay, that's my mother. So what happens is today we want to give people a really firm foundation, and I believe nothing can be more firm than that, than understanding the language. So before I begin, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check in the chat box, and I'm going to make sure that I'm coming through loud and clear. I'm actually at a remote location, but the internet has so far proven to be pretty good, so we're just going to check it out. All right, Freeman says, I'm ready to go, so by all means, we'll go. Here it is. To answer this question, even the title itself that was given, to give the origin of language, symbol, and speech to everyone would seem like a big thing. It would seem like, well, how could you come to such a masterful level of knowledge? How could you even say that you can even speak on such things? Well, this is the byproduct, of course, of when master knowledge, everyone is not in possession of. Remember, the idea here is to put everyone in the know, to give them the keys to the great arcanum, their entire arc or their body, to allow them to activate it, not half-truths. And we'll talk about that later on in the conversation today, how everything that we experience in reality must come in pairs. That's why we were put in a binary world. That's why everything has a mate. So let us begin first with understanding the germ stage of all life, which is a seed or a pod or egg. If you notice, all life on this planet, it has a germination phase. So if you want to now turn on your micro-macro device and understand that everything has an origin, and sometimes when you're looking at the germ of something, meaning what it is before it becomes its maximized phase, when you look at the germ of something, you may often not recognize it. What is it about when you crack open an egg that looks like the chicken? You can't even recognize it. So this is why so many people have a hard time recognizing not only who other people are around them, but also themselves. I also cracked the knowledge of what they call infinite recursion, which means that how do you know if a person's in their cocoon phase or if they're in their full-blown stage? You don't, because there's no such thing. You're constantly going through a quantum teleportation of yourself. You're maximizing yourself. You're birthing yourself. You're transmuting yourself. And so each stage or each preliminary stage is more or less a downgrade. That's how our society has been taught, that when we look at the past, we see that as like the downgrade of who we are. Now we've bettered ourselves. No, that's not how it works. The germ is where you came from, and it deserves a certain level of reverence. You have to still look at it a certain way in order for you to maintain your roots and be firmly grounded in life. So what I'm telling you is that if you don't understand the circle, what is on the other side of the portal, the shape of the egg itself, a sphere, that type of curve being used. If you don't understand that you were even there and that's where you come from and that stages that you go through all the time, then you never begin the first lesson about how to shape, fashion, and form or create. This means you and then would be creating, but not even knowing how you're actually creating. This means in reality where people create things that they don't want. They get in relationships that they don't want to be in. They make agreements that they don't like. They work in places that they don't want to be. So I'm showing you now the origins of that it seems to come from nowhere. And that's also where the zero is as a portal. It's a hole. And when you look into it, it has a tendency to be either completely white or completely dark. Just as, meaning either white or black, the portal, when you look through it, always is. And the reason for that is that what is on the other side, you don't know. And so that is the whole process of your growth, is to continuously go through these portals to create more growth for self. Now, I'm going to bring this back to the beginning because I can't adhere this to some of the most powerful systems, especially spiritual knowledge here on this planet. It's just called Kabbalah, such as the Egyptian knowledge. Okay, let's bring it all to the front table, because I see a lot of individuals coming forth now bringing, again, half-truths, not all the knowledge. And then because people want to hear the truth, or they like a person for one reason or another, they agree with them even if the individual is not telling the whole truth. So this is what's got to stop. So in the Sefer Yetzirah, I'm going to read something the key of the Sefer Yetzirah. It says, 20 foundation letters, he placed them in a circle and directed them from the 12 constellations. This is what they say their God did. So instead of getting into the dogma, let's look at what's being said here, because I'm going to show you the origins of language. Now, the circle is Earth, obviously. It is even you, the aura. All the circular things are like in one club called the circle. You know how they say you're in the circle. You're in the group. Okay? So what happens here in our world is, for the ancient people, they didn't have TV. They didn't have halogen bulbs. And they didn't have an excessive level of smog. So looking at the stars to them was like you see on the HD time lapses on Vimeo.com. If you wouldn't see what the real stars look like, they've taken some high definition cameras and put them in areas where there's no light and no smog, and let you really see the sky. So is it not easy for us to see that the sky was the most fascinating thing and the biggest level of entertainment for the ancient people? And when you study the ancient knowledge in its totality, you'll understand that where written language came from was not from scrapes and scratches on cave walls, but the connections that the stars showed at night. For those with active third eyes, they could see different stars actually drawing a line to each other as if they were connected, and then making these shapes that explain why the flora and fauna of our world, meaning the animals, why they're here. Why are you here with the dog? Why are you here with the elephant? What about the grasshopper? What are these beings' story, or do you not care? So the school that I come from says that you must know all things of importance. And the reverence of our species, some people say, oh, it's all about nature, but they never go to nature. They never study nature. This is not going to work like this, because what's happened to us is, like I revealed before with the English language, it has 26 letters. 26 plus 26 is 52. 52 weeks, that's a whole year. So we're missing half of the language. So what I've discovered now, and I'm going to show you another major glimpse into what's happening in the world, is that you are missing half of the knowledge. And now that half of the knowledge is going to be given, the other half is going to be given to you today. Now, I'm going to adhere a little bit to my notes here, because Once again, I'm telling you on a core level that the language of the Malachim, meaning the language of the king, Malachim means king. It comes from the Hebrew word M-L-K or M-L-C-H. This means Melech, which means king. Now, of course, I'm not telling you right now, oh, there's the king and he's the king of earth. That's not what I'm telling you. What I'm continuing is what I was talking about 2 weeks ago with the root chakra and the Lord and the horn gods and their dominion. And their language that they speak. Now, some people think they're going to go run up on the astral plane to some other being and talk English to them. Or some people just think, oh, well, no, when I get out there, my body will know how to speak. No, everything about how we develop is what we learn and what we earn. This was the entire structure of what made grand beings, is that you had to earn what you became. So when we really look into this, what we find is that the kings of this earth spoke one language. That language was developed by them. And these individuals, also known as Rephaim, also known as Nephilim, also known as Anunnaki at times. These individuals had the knowledge of the stars. They knew the language of the stars. And so when they wrote it down and passed it to their children, there were already groups of individuals that were in possession with the language of how to bring down the energy of the stars. Now, of course, if you look in Wicca, they always talk about draw down the power of the moon. The ancestors were drawing down power from all star systems based on what they wanted to accomplish. This also gets into some of the major questions that I wanted to get answered last night, like who created this world? Is this world so big? In this universe so big that we haven't even identified who created it yet? Even though all the time we talk about other universes that are outside of our own. So I'm coming to tell you that they haven't been scrambling in the dark about understanding how our universe functions and other universes outside of it. But you have to take it from scratch because you begin from the dust. This is like someone telling you in a race, you begin from the beginning. You don't begin from the middle. Everything that you get in a race, because you earned it. And you can also even go backwards. And this is why I'm here to talk to humanity about avoiding going backwards into the tunnels of things that they've already experienced, that they've already learned. Like, we've already learned the powers of this world that give us the highest level of being. That is compassion, bolted onto what humans are calling love now. How we get off of that system is when we don't take care of our children and then they get scarred and then they grow up on a shaky foundation and then they start having the emotional imbalances that are corresponding to that, which we call hate. So now this thing must be reworked from an entirely different level. We can no longer even accept it, well, let's instill a curriculum and then catch our kids from where they're going now. It's not enough time. We have to work on all levels. So this is why this information is a depth level knowledge that's brought today. And so if anything that you don't understand, just work with the information that will be continuously presented to you for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And you will gain a full understanding on this, and you will gain bearing because you will see it everywhere. Now, the pentagram. What happens is all of what you're seeing in the constellation is based on geometry. So now you can visualize when the circle or the sphere starts to become shaped by light, which is experiences. Things that you see in your reality are created by light. So once you start to begin to shape your uncut diamond, you begin to behave a certain way. So how that works with language is the geometry casts shadows. And this is also what Daniel Winter was talking about last night. Many of the individuals who know about the tetrahedron know that it casts the shadows of all the Hebrew characters. If you hold the tetrahedron right and you shine the light right, it casts the shadow of all the characters when you turn it into different angles. And that's how the language was created. So here you have a language that's completely based on a tetrahedron. But of course, we know this language to be a derivative or basically a slave language to the ancient Egyptian or Kemetan language, which was, of course, the language of the Malachim, the writing of the stars. So what I'm telling you is that you can see on all levels how language is created, because when a shape appears, an entire language can be made from that shape. And as I said, that's Hebrew. So it leads us to ask ourselves, what happens if someone puts that shape into their brain, meaning they take on this language? It actually changes them into that structure. Do you see how spheric beings, which are generally dark matter in globulus, can then be shaped by taking a language in their mind that is already been chiseled, already been shaped by light, has a specific story or a specific way it became the way that it is. So, of course, if you're just adhering to the hexagram system, or the pentagram system, some people with the pentagram all on the chest and pentagram all on the body, and some people with the Merkabahs, and some people with the elven stars, and some people with the octagons. But they're not getting that unless you have all of them, you're still on the wheel. You're just a piece in the wheel. What we need to work with is actually understanding the entire sky. Basically, we don't just need to be hearing about Taurus and Aldebaran all the time. There's so many constellations and so many stories that will completely fill our world with being. And that people most of the time now are just bored. They do the same thing every day. They're made to work. So who is tasking them? The king? Who's the king? Is it Martin Luther King? MLK? Is it Moloch? Is it Melech or Menelik? I mean, we study this occult knowledge, and then we look in Ethiopia and we find men with fully decorated, even decorated more than the queen, with medals and badges and stars. And then when we look into their history, we find that they even are carrying the covenant of all the spiritual knowledge that everyone is following today in their sessions of ascended masters and Bible studies of Christianity, and even in their Islam. So, for the record, the pentagram is known as R, A-R, the R sign. That R is very prevalent in the root to the word Arab, Arabic, Aramaic, because this first language, when language finally becomes something important, you have to understand the Aramaic language. Hebrew is not the oldest language. Anytime they need to authenticate a word in Hebrew that they cannot find the origins of anywhere, but they know that it's there because they have the entire tetrahedron on the wall, and they're missing certain combinations in their numbers. When they want to know what that word means because they can't find the equivalent for it in Hebrew, they go look to the Arabic. This is because, like I told you before, there was a quarrel, and this quarrel continues today between two brothers. One of them, of course, being the Arab nations, and the other ones being the tribe Ham, which are, of course, America. Lower Egypt versus Upper Egypt. Still playing out. So the interesting part for all this is that you get a chance to put this in control inside of yourself, meaning that external conflict that you're seeing going on between these two, basically what I call the arms of the universe, the ones used for conflict, like when they say this is the army. It's important for you to know that the difference between Hebrew and Arabic is the R and the L. This was what I was bringing forth last night. One has R as their god, A-R, who you see backwards is Ra. Obviously, the Arabs adore Ra. Look what's going on in Dubai. The builders, like I told you, are Ra. So you can see it all there. It's there for you. So what happens also is that if you refuse to accept this in a reality in which this is all going on, it's almost like you're a captive of a war or something. I want this conversation also today to not be about me either and what I believe. I want this to be what we all have to end up coming to terms with so that we can move into other things. Like, I'm just talking about what's going on, a real life conversation about what's happening around you. You have two forces continuously arming themselves to the teeth with death-dealing weapons. The Queen summons an entire army of 5,000 stealth drones. I mean, this left hand, right hand is still not being put under control. The left wing and right wing, they show you in the world the L and the R. They're both the same. Now look at your hands, right? Hold your hands out. They're both the same. So no matter what kind of argument they have about who's more superior, what happened in our world is that the right hand became more superior in the external world while the left hand stayed more superior in the internal world. This was hidden in the riddle of Cain killing Abel, them placing Abel in what we call the afterworld or afterlife, the astral plane. And then thus Abel set up his shop there, and then Cain ruled from the physical world. Let me show you deeper. Cain is king, is Khan, is coin, is Cohen, is CNN, is Conan, and he is the ruler of this world. Now, the secret behind this particular energy and entity is, if you look at the word Cain, it actually now look at the device that you give an old person and say, hey, walk on this Cain. And this is why they said the Cain or Enki became man's helper in the world and taught him how to survive here. Because in the symbolics in ancient times, you had a cane, and the cane was either straight up and down like an L, or it had that little curve to it. So you see that when a person says Cain, in our minds, it equals a symbol. If we understand what the symbol means, then we understand it's the L. Okay, L is 90 degrees. So this ties back into the language. So this is what's going on in your brain when you're talking, is what I'm explaining to you. Your brain is ciphering this entire language while you're speaking, and this is why. You couldn't have an A without a B. You couldn't have a C without a D. In ancient languages, the languages were paired up. The letters were paired up. This is why in this reality we're paired up. It's not just the language, it's actually us, because guess what? The language is who we are. Now, here's how I'm going to prove that to you. Notice how in the reality there are other animals, and they speak other languages. But your ears can tell you that the difference in pitch, and we've even measured it, between many of the calls that most animals make does not vary much. So this means that basically this animal is limited to about 5 words. Now, I'm not trying to prove to everyone that humans are smarter than animals. What I'm telling you is that the reason why humans reason the way they do is because of the language that they have. So I'm automatically showing you that 2 things is happening. People that use more primitive languages don't have the same range as individuals that use more complex languages. Now, the dolphin could be using a more complex language. So thus, it would shape the entity or the spirit of the being that the dolphin continuously becomes as it unsheaths. It would shape the mind level and the ideas of that particular soul or being. So I'm also showing you that if you don't grasp to something that's firm as far as how you understand language, then you come out and continuously spiral in a deformed way. You have to understand the other side of the circle in order for you to gain your balance. So let's go a little bit into now how this works on another level. Now, we talked about how the precession of Venus traces out this pentagram in the sky. Okay? Now, when you look into the Kabbalah, you understand that the mouth is Venus. It corresponds to basically the key point of the pentagram. The top point of the pentagram is supposed to be the planet Venus. Okay, the reason why is all desire comes forth from the mouth. how hard would it be to tell people what you want and how you want it done and what you need without a mouth? You see what I mean? So how our body was put up and put together was in different pieces, different planets made up different parts. This is what the archons built. So what happens is that because Venus corresponds with the mouth and desire, it's also the tongue. Everything to do with Venus is a kiss. This is also why you saw in the Olympic ceremony where the people who are clearly in the know, the queen and all of them, they end the ceremony with the kiss. Because the kiss is the fulfillment of the desire. So again, you understand now, and that's why I think in the Bible it says if your tongue caused the whole body to sin, then cut it out. You know, this is the vulgar, rude way that these people have to deal with the universal powers instead of putting them in check. They feel like they're just going to cut it off and get rid of it. But the reality is that from your tongue and from your mouth, it's something that controls the entire body and where it goes. And this is why Venus became such an important planet to all these ancient people. Again, I'm not talking about me today and what I believe in and what I'm doing. I'm talking as a person in a ship, as an observer of what's going on Earth. And when I look at the Arab tradition, that pentagram and that crescent moon has already been identified. When I look especially into all of the religions and I see their geometry, that geometry is already identified. We understand what system and what language that comes from. Now, what's happened to most people is they got the confusion of tongues. Let me explain to you what was going on. So the Malachim were using all one language, which is the language of the Malachim, language of the stars, bringing down energy from the stars and continuously creating their fantastic Lemurian and Atlantean cities with their professional worshipers. Now, let me explain to you what a professional worshiper is, because we've even become that today in this life, having to work all the time. Because the lords and the kings are having us work. And so that's a form of worship. Back in the days, it was the same thing. The Malachim set up cities such as Angkor Wat and such as Egypt, build these magnificent temples for themselves. What happened that transmuted all this is one of the individuals that were working close to them released the language that they were speaking to some of the more intelligent of the people that were being mastered over. So I'm also telling you that the parents began to basically abuse the children. Now, some people say, well, what do you mean, ancestors? Look, it's happening today. We're still doing it. Us not giving our children the knowledge that they need to continuously go forth is a level of abuse. Everyone is always trying to point the other finger. You know where I point it? At myself. It saves so much time. You get to learn so much when you realize this is all what you did. Now, you also can undo it because that's your timeline. You have the power to release yourself and bind yourself. There's uses for both, actually. As Dan was saying, there's centripetal and centrifugal. You're spinning in or out. Widdershins or diesel. You're going to the future sometimes, and sometimes you hang out in the past. So you just need to now understand what you're doing. That's what's going to summon the strength needed here to protect what we have already put together. Meaning that our children, we already put them together. There has to be some level of standard. They introduce the standards every day, the rules. I can't go out and do certain things. So let's not increase that in another level. Let's work on spiritual rules where you cannot violate another person's spiritual being by forcing upon them untruths. So let's go into it today again. Now, my situation right now is with the individuals that keep bringing forth the Hebrew language in small pieces, acting like Smeagol with the ring, meaning not telling people that this language is a language of power, and those who speak it properly can manifest anything they want into 3D. Because the Hebrew language shows the mastery of the cube, which is the tesseract. And that's why they saw Jesus on the cross, because the cross, of course, is a two-dimensional symbol of the tesseract, or basically the motion or the fourth dimension of this world and how to bring things into manifestation. Now, what happens here is that, of course, being able to do such things is highly governed, meaning that it's governed within you. You have to be able to understand all the components in order to release the potential. So you're stuck in a reality where they won't give you the components to release the potential. So most people are bottlenecking. There's a huge frustration. Like Dan Witter was saying, the whole football thing, and because the man's internal energy can't go all the way up to the crown chakra and come back down, he in the physical reality looks for the same type of impact and the same type of joy. So we have a spill off into the physical reality to where it's collapsing. So I'm going to show you also how the languages were being passed around, because remember, you couldn't even read. People forget that because most people just came from descendancies of slaves. If you read, they cut your eyes and arms off. They did not want you to know how to read. There was a reason for this, because only aristocracy could read, because the language that they were using was them trying to put the language of the Malachim back together. So they had to keep updating it. That's what the English language, a hogwash of Malachim. So they kept trying to put the language back together after it was thwarted, meaning that there was something that occurred in our planet, and this is shown in the flood and things of that nature. There was something that occurred where all of what they had gained from the language had basically went under the water, like electronics getting soaked. And they had to now regenerate all of this stuff again. So to stay on topic, the kings were the only ones, or the ones with the trade routes, basically, were the only ones that spoke a language. Now, here's why it was also important to speak and write a language, because someone had to keep the books. It shows you that even the Vikings were in North America before Christopher Columbus. Their coins were found there. Coin, con, king, cane. They've been doing this for a long time, multiple lifetimes. And so with these trade routes of these Phoenicians, who I said brought the phonetics, which we call our language, they, when meeting tribe leaders, would marry into these tribes and then teach the people that were in that immediate family the language. So those people spoke another language. And this is why when you go to other countries and then you go to their royalty and aristocracy and you ask them, how many languages do you speak? They're going to tell you a plethora of languages, and they're going to also tell you about they're not going to tell you about other languages that they speak. There are other languages. Now, let me show you how language, again, affects things. If you speak Spanish, there is a limitation to how many words that are put together for a certain particular object. So let's say a pair of sunglasses only has 5 words. Let's just use it as an example, not correct numbers, but a pair of sunglasses only has 5 words in Spanish. In other languages, it has 20 words. Even English has at least double or triple the amount of words for a particular object than most other languages. Now, the pros and cons, of course, are if this becomes too expansive for you, like Chinese, you get lost in it, or Mandarin. However, if you can maintain control of the language, or the cabal, or the cable, if you can maintain control of it, then you can keep circumferencing it and building more and more energy. So what happens is that if a person that has a language in their mind and they're confused about what it really means, they stay on planets ruled by Malachim for a long time. This is something I was so glad and so sad for the conversation today. I was glad in the sense that I would be able to produce to everyone the keys to their complete emancipation. I was sad because everyone is not in possession of the keys already. You see, the experience that people will have to go through until they learn what we're talking about today, we need to work with how to ease that up. How to ease up lifetimes of hurt and pain where you get lost in darkness. You don't even understand what's going on. It doesn't even make sense to you anymore. Like, that is not something that we have to continue to do. So let's keep going here. Now, as I said before, there are certain languages then that if you speak those languages, it automatically starts to basically evolve your mind, body, and soul. So the advanced languages now are sonar, scalar, what's producing crop circles. So because even there was a limitation to our voice box, There was in the physical, and definitely cymatics, and in the physical reality, they created devices to do this. Like harp can play a certain kind of frequency that you cannot speak with your mouth, but you can with your mind. That's called intoning. Then the power behind it goes in the proper place. That's what I was bringing out last night, that certain things you don't bring into external realities. The power levels behind them are, you don't bring it in. It's like letting your kids have, letting your baby have a gun in the stroller with them. That's what it's literally like. So people have gotten so ignorant now, they don't believe that we're supposed to separate one from the other, that we're supposed to go back into the reality and set its structure. We feel so defeated. Oh, I can't. Do you know they control the money and the blah, blah, blah? What I'm trying to explain to you is once you understand this language, the power is immense of what you're capable of doing. It is governed. It is searching for the individuals who know how to do the proper things with it. Now, notice there's still a whole group of people that they don't think they should touch it. But we're looking at a world where it's now August. Like, man, they were talking about 2012 was supposed to be cracking. Like, I showed up for the 2012 party and nobody was there. Everyone's still talking about someone that's yet to come. I'm trying to tell you the person's already here. It's you. I'm trying to explain that this is the reason why it happened, because some people they need to hear the reason. They don't feel comfortable with going on to the next level unless they know how it happened to them before. And I'm telling you, the ancestors went nuts on the energy. They even started to pull energy from their children. Matrices were created. Bodies were created. Using the same knowledge that is how the universe was created, which is called language, the knowledge of the stars. See, the knowledge of the stars teaches you how to bring down how the universe works onto a 3D environment to make it work here too. It even allows you to create more, which we call kids. Trust me, if in our minds, bodies, and souls we didn't understand how to create, we will be barren. The species. When you lose the ability to understand how to sustain life, you can't sustain it anymore. It doesn't come from you anymore. It becomes foreign to you. You have to be taught then, again, how to sustain life again. And this is also why dimensions like Earth are created as a somewhat of a rehab. A rehab of getting everyone back into the state that they can remain in, but they must manage themselves. This time there will be no crutches. There will be no Messiah for you to have take all your sins. There will be none of that. This will be the real test for when the baby, like I said, most of the knowledge coming from Babylon or Babylon, has to become an adult or an adept. You're already speaking the language. Thank your forefathers for that. They gave you this covenant. It's already inside of you. It's changing you. Now you have to master over it. This is just a situation that we woke up in. It's like, do you really expect that if you go out and you party all night, you pass out, and you stay passed out for, let's say, 9-10 hours, you're going to get up in the same place that you passed out in? No. Someone's going to have moved you. You may find your wallet's gone. You may find you forget even who you are. So what I'm saying is that we have to start incorporating our real reason to understanding why am I really here? What's really going on? So I want to take this time. I'm going to take a brief break here. And then when we come forward, we're going to answer some questions, especially about the language, the effects of the language. We're going to talk about also, towards the end of the conversation, children, and how important it is when we can raise a child that is foreign to how to hate. It doesn't, the child is raised in balance. It means you can't get the child too much and you can't get the child too little of all the measures of what this life has. But if you could create something like that, the potential of it, when you understand how all this works, you understand that the energy of how much a person really cares and feels for you pushes you throughout the day. When you feel loved and wanted, It allows you to go with a strength that is inaccessible for many people. So now you are at the root of the key of what you need. You need that culture. You need that group of individuals that are there with you. And you need rapidly the world to become that way, to where it's not somewhere you have to go so far away and pay for plane tickets and all that stuff. It's the person right next door. So this is actually the metamorphosis of this world. Just the individual that is to proclaim the happenings of it. You see what I mean? Like, I'm just giving you the details, the fine details to how it all took place. But still remember that the universe comes to a point where it corrects all cycles. If the story of who we are and what we are and what's happened in balance and in sequence and in harmony is written in stars, then this means that the moment that we understand what is really written, we return to that stage. I'm a star. You see? Like, you can actually pull apart the largest level of success that you can ever receive. Meaning that you can actually get the finer details to how you get to where you want to go. So, again, we're going to return here in just a moment. We're going to answer some questions. If you have a question you want to call in, you can do so at area code 347-996-5688. That's area code 347-996-5688. And if you press 1, then we can answer your call. All right, here we go. We're going to a brief break. Okay, we're ready for the second half of the show. Of course, if you would like to call in, the guest call-in is area code 347-996-5688. And so we're going to just unpack today's show. So what we're going to do is, of course, I get really excited, especially in the beginning of revealing the knowledge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over my notes from the beginning of the show, and we're just going to have like another segment of the same show again. That way people understand it becomes a lot more clear. So, as I was saying, is the beginning of life if we want to see, well, where did life really start? We don't have to not know that information, because most people think, well, I don't know, it probably started somewhere deep in space. I wasn't there. But the reality is that you see the life beginning all the time. If you went and asked that entity that just comes into the world, hey, where were you before? That entity is probably not going to be able to tell you, I don't know. I don't know where I was, right? So what happens is that, and this is, of course, what happens to human beings, so we can assume that happens for other creatures that are at least on the same geometry as us. And that's the other thing. Now, remember, the relationship with the pentagram is also a relationship with phi, the golden mean, the golden ratio, the spiral, the way the ocean moves, the way shells are formed, the way all the molecules are structured. So what it also means is that phi is not only this occult symbol that is slashed around by individuals that may not even know the full extent of what it means, but it's also the system of creation for this universe in which the entities that did put this system together chose to use. And so thus the individuals that reincarnate here are incarnating into these physical phi-based bodies, or this phi-based geometry, which equals how many senses we have. It's more or less a governor of what we can and cannot do. Because notice when you're outside of the body, there's no limitations to a vast extent. So what happens when you're inside the body, the limitations come because you're inside of the body. So you're inside of the pentagram. And this is why there becomes this occult twist to everything, because, of course, if you start talking about the knowledge of how to put spirits inside of bodies, then you get into an entirely different level of mysticism. Of course, that would get more into the Egyptians. That would get more into the genetic modifications and the creations of the different versions of the human being. All this, but we're still talking about vessels. We're talking about what the spirit is put in. The spirit itself is far more vast. It has no limitations to a certain degree where it can be identified. And that's what I was explaining also about this dark matter or globulous form that one generally is before they are shaped or become aware. You see what I mean? So you look at the ebb and the flow of your life, And then now you're at a state where you could choose whether you want to go into complete nothingness or full experience. And then many that have crossed into those planes are starting to realize that there is really no difference between the two. Once you obtain the level of being able to understand how expansive you really are, and the goal of the goal of even the stars, of putting them there, is to, in some way or another, get that to you. So whether you get the animal that corresponds to the star, whether you get the letter that corresponds to the star, or you get the tree, or you get the person, or you get the symbol, however many different forms you get of it, you get the lesson. And so this is also why I think that in some of the books they say, the king, the Malachim, the dragon, was allowed to reign for 1,000 years, some say 2,000 years. I believe that these times are over. I believe that is why there is this big change in the world, is that it has the whole world in its thrall for the last, I don't know how many thousands of years, where if individual even thought about talking about this, it was going to be a wrap for them. So somehow they had some kind of jurisdiction to allow things to continue to go on the way that they were doing things. Now, that jurisdiction has run out. What's necessary now is for many of the individuals that are put here to do something expansive for this planet, for them to wake up, for them to then, like I say, counterbalance their shadow. Meaning that the other entities we should not look at as separate to us, but as parts of us that are running without control. And I'll explain this. As I told you before, our children are attracted to where we won't go. So this means that if there are other planes, other life forms, other languages, other vibrations and frequencies, and we don't have those mapped out, guess what? If any one of them pop up, our children are going to be attracted to it. So what's happened is that you have this Lady Gaga, MIA, Nicki Minaj, Rihanna, portal disaster opening up. And because that is the only thing that is in front of our children especially, and this is from all age ranges, that's where they're choosing to go because it's new. They haven't been into that yet. There's no map for that. There's no one there to say, hey, I went down there, and hey, you don't want to go in there. Now, I'll also tell you that someone like a Rihanna, a Nicki Minaj, a Lady Gaga, whatever, if an individual dove in and pulled them out of where they are and snatched them back up into the higher plane, that individual would then come forward and tell everyone, hey, don't go down there. You've seen my life. You've seen what I've done. So I'm telling you also what else is down there. But that will also be like a conversation of like the birds and the bees. These are conversations where some adults feel like you shouldn't even have these conversations with children. But at the same time, we're finding that our children are going to get that conversation from somewhere else when we don't want to give it to them. Meaning that it's important for us to explain to them also the entire story and not to give them the half-truths. Now, I also wanted to get into the desire component, again, in the mouth, is also the symbol of salt. Now, they show you how they say that the covenant was made with the salt. And the reason why, and they even have a statement that says, humans are the salt of the earth. We are what gives the earth flavor. And if you see also with your food, if I take salt away from you, what do you really end up with? Now, of course, they teach in many of the teachings of heightening your senses to remove salt and sugar from your diet, which of course is these two white powders. And the reason they say that is because if you decrease your dependency on having to taste things with salt, then your taste buds come back. And then when you taste like a grape or something like that, or something, just regular rice, it has more of a flavor to you even though it has no salt in it. But this technique also heightens your senses. You can hear better. You're far more perceptive. You can see. You can zoom in more. Nothing really goes out of the corner of your eye without you seeing it. So this is also why our time was generally spent in activation when we arrived on Earth, not working. Because there are levels and rings that you constantly have to gain in order to become a complete being, to graduate Earth. So I also introduced an amazing product just recently that I've been trying, and man, the moment I started trying it, the first time I knew I had to introduce it. But I put it through 2 weeks of trial, just to make sure, which I was already sure because, of course, I deal with a lot of stuff, but the chi booster. What is generally happening with most people is because the gravitational force, like Dan Winter was talking about, the pentagram has a lot to do with gravity also, that G in masonry. That gravity pulls one down to the earth. It keeps you from feeling like you're going to fly off and that you're ethereal and that you can fly and all the ideas that you're expansive. Remember, there's other symbolism behind when you can't just fly on your own and when you can. And that's why in lucid dream, when you fly, it feels so great. But in earth, you try to fly, you don't go anywhere. You can't get off the ground. So what happens is that, man, there's just so many ways that this, just ties all in. Like, let me just look at the switchboard real quick because I didn't have the switchboard on. All right, we're going to keep going. So I kind of lost my train of thought just on the idea itself because I just flew off. But I guess that's why we have both states. Now it's time for people to understand how to fly off and then how to land. And then also how to jump and make that plunge into telling people the truth, because this is also what I've been experiencing is I've been uncovering information that has been written already by other scholars and people that have just been buried. It's not like that there's just many books in the world. There's more books than people. So in all of those books, the ones that really talk about the truth, are buried. So it's very interesting to me how I'm pulling all this knowledge of individuals who've already found out what I'm explaining and have already even put more work in certain areas. Like I have now a book that shows me every single letter based on the constellation that it connects to. And what it shows is just like when we had that meeting with Will and Swart about the tarot, and of course there's 22 cards in the tarot. I told you in the Sapphire, they said, let us take 22 letters and put them in the circle, etc. So what it's saying is that 22 is really 1111. That everything is paired up. So when you take these two pairs and then you put them together, there is an igniting. So when we see that in language, we also see that when people get the other half of the story or whatever they need to fulfill themselves, this igniting takes place within them. So let's get ready to take this call because I didn't want to, like I said, miss all the calls that we had today. I'm going to go ahead and start with area code 202. Caller, you're on the 2012 show, Wholeness.
Wholeness is always. And I don't even have a question. I just want to say for all of your effort, for all of the things in time and out of time, man, well done. Well done. That's all I have to share, man. Well done. Thank you, brother.
I do appreciate that, brother. I know it's really one of those things where if you understand exactly what is revealed in the conversation today, the person also sees a major completion with everything that they've been coming to find out on Earth. Because also when you neglect it, there becomes this whole need to have to redo it over again. This is also what I noticed. It's interesting because some people say, well, I don't know if I want to accept that as truth or not accept that as truth. I say that if you can find any system all the way to and figure it out all the way through its completion, you accept it as truth because it only becomes a foundation for you because you already solved it. And I think that that's why in the last card is solve or the soul, because it's like a mathematical equation at first. And a very complex one. But then when you write out the answer, it's solved, and then time for you to go on to something else. I can also feel where a big part of the stagnancy that we're having is because it's been time for us to go to something else. It's like really the stasis is happening where individuals do the same jobs, do the same thing, and don't know how to break that shackle. We can also see that the shackle has a lot to do with the continuous carrying the load of when not spreading the knowledge. Now notice this. The kings, the Malachim, are also in the symbol as they show in the book document that I'm going to release. AB as the horned cow, pulling the burden all the time, basically, the yoked. And the problem is if they don't release the knowledge, right, of the power and information that we all have, then they end up pulling the load and us. Just because they're so selfish that they don't want to give us the power so that we can pull the load. You see what I mean? It's almost like an individual that you try to help and they say, no, I don't want no help. I'll do it all myself. And then it gets to the point where you start asking that person, do you really understand that there's no such thing as all on your like maybe long? You need to see that, man. Every breath you take is coming from things that you have yet to identify. So I suppose you let me help you pull this load. Let me help you teach these children. Let me help you re-stimulate this environment. And then we'll also work on getting you rejuvenated. But you're going to have a seat. Like, I think the beings that are here now, that's what I was telling Dan Winter last night, you know, for what you call Elohim are here. If Elohim are just individuals who know how to lucid dream and know how to call up names and things on the other dimensions, here's another thing. It's a sidebar, but it's an important one. Notice how in the entire language, right, and in a lot of languages, you can make all those shapes with your fingers. Some people call it a gang sign. This is because your hand is a pentagram. So because this entire knowledge is put together on the pentagram, the hand has the ability to form E, B, S, R, O, P, Z. All those can be formed with your hands. And they call those mudras. See, it's like all
I do have okay, that brings to mind. Okay, the city I'm in, there's certain graffiti. After I saw your post about the two mascots in the Olympics, there's a entity here who likes to place certain graffiti around the city, like very prominent, and it's on certain energy centers. So, from a spiritual police standpoint, how do you act against that symbol? Is it just through meditation? Is it just through spreading vibration from aura contact? Does there need to be another symbol in a certain proximity? Like, because when I see the graffiti of the Olympic mascots with a 3-letter character next to it, and I know that these characters bring an energy through it as like they act like a portal. Like, do you just walk past it because it is a part of dealing with language? Because it's like
I would definitely say
assault by language. You know what I mean? It's like an assault by language. So
yeah, I mean I know exactly what you're saying. What I would say is bathe in the universal spectrum light. Basically, what happens is that. See, when I finally pulled apart this whole thing, I figured out that all those energies, especially the ones that like to tag or mark, because they use tattoos. All these words are also begin with ta, by the way. So they love to tag and tattoo, and then they mark. So the term bathe in this full spectrum light means that all of these energies know when a certain level of light comes through, it's just as it chases it to the corner of a room. When you light a light bulb in the middle, all the darkness gets chased to the corner of the room. It's not something that the darkness can really prevent, because the darkness cannot withstand the full spectrum light. It either has an opportunity at that point to become, by image, the full spectrum light, or to retreat. That's why the serpent, they tell you it's fight or flight. That's also with the lower spirit worlds, Vasuki, and all the serpent beings that live down there that carry their own jewels to light their path. But when they come in front of a real light, as they say the Messiah does walk forth through hell and shining the light to those who want to receive it. But it's full spectrum, though. That's what they always like to make you think light is white. Now, let me show you this. Now, when someone says light and light bringers, I'm telling you, these people are no different than any other polar spectrum. And the reason why is because now if you go to places like Switzerland and you see this ethereal attitude, everyone's pulling around, or this ethereal bougie attitude, is what I call it, everyone's pushing around the BMWs and things, then you notice when you go to any of the houses and homes there, especially that are in the Alps, all these people see is bright white all day. Just white. Like a blank screen, basically. So a blank screen is very emotionless. This is why colors like green give you the compassion and the energy that is more associated with this planet. And then, of course, what darkness, we know what darkness does. So that's what I'm also saying about the full spectrum light. I'm always like raising my hand to mention that to people, because especially in a visualization, you really want to make sure that you're coming through with the whole thing. So this being knows it has an opportunity to transmute itself. See, notice what I'm saying. I'm not at energies that keep marking and things all around the place are looking for the full spectrum light so that they can change. But they will keep doing it until they see it. Until they see the full spectrum light, all of these entities, remember there are many of them that are running around seeking an instructor. And so and then how they move, because of the space that they're confined to, is they move through two-dimensional symbols. So, of course, that's what a tag or writing is. So that symbol itself is basically the portal. When they come through that symbol, they come out as those pieces in 3D. And so when that piece comes out and it sees full spectrum light, which it hasn't seen in a while, remember, all of these, because they're so close to what we used to be, then they're facing the same situation. They didn't see the truth, just like a person who went through their whole life and never heard about some of the stuff that we're talking about today. You see what I mean? So now they're still seeking an instructor, but they're not just going to give up. That's the other thing. They're not just going to go away. Now, you can see why they won't go away, because they're still looking for the full spectrum light. So this is like you on a lower dimension, but still trying to find the truth. You wouldn't give up. And then finally, full spectrum light comes to you. But the only beacon that you've been able to send out since then is some crazy goetic influenced people that have been evoking you to use you for other things. Because how Goetia and necromancy works, which is the knowledge of Lower Egypt, like they need to stop playing. The whole Necronomicon and the necromancy and the imperfect pentagrams, all that knowledge came from Abdul al-Hazred, the Arab, and was given into the Sumerian and passed into the Egyptian. It wasn't the knowledge of Upper Egypt. So why everyone's running around trying to claim the knowledge of Lower Egypt, which is the whole Egyptian pantheon, etc., they need to understand that's the underworld. That's where we were before. And some that just left there have that reflection from the color of their skin. And I'll just leave it at that. So generally when you've been through something really tough, you tend to be a lot more equipped to deal with the next thing. And that's why also there's other people that can be summoned in this reality that when they find out what's going on, they ain't going to play the radio like a lot of people that are finding out, especially on the ethereal planes, and still doing nothing about it. Meaning that the individuals that are really soft at heart but still won't get in the trenches do possess a great deal of the knowledge because they went to the Cambridge. Remember, I have documents now that I'm releasing that I'm showing that were written by people who published thesis papers that got on this topic because they knew this was the crown of knowledge, especially language. The guy that developed Hewlett-Packard learned linear B from Crete, which was Minoan linear B, or linear A, which was a language they found, but they couldn't decipher. So this kid that started Hewlett-Packard and is billionaire, and I think maybe dead now, he's the one who deciphered the whole thing and then put the language itself into all of his machines, because it was very easy for him to see that language and the function of language can then be applied to computers and other machines. And he made $1 billion off it and left without telling anyone anything, except for his peers. And that's why there's all this knowledge. Like you see JSTOR, they don't allow you to get in. You can't even get in unless you're some member of a university. By the way, I'm spitting that out. So individuals, if you know how to get in JSTOR and you can get us a username and password, that will be excellent. But the documents and the knowledge is there because the same game is still being played, which is let them, the ones that they call them untrained Amharets, meaning untrained people of Earth, let them not have the knowledge. What you see in the Talmud. So this is what we also have to consider, is that because, remember, these people were such in a quarrel with each other, I'm talking about the Arabs and those who are now in Israel, that the ones in Israel just created a slightly different language just because they didn't want to use their language. But everyone knows that says etymology that they're basically the same language. It shows you that still this little root of animosity is causing us all problems. Like, I may be from Quasar 9 and not know nothing about any of these folks, but still have to deal with the situation that's going on because I'm in the immediate reality, and I have a child here. So this also is what, there's a marriage, when anyone puts a seed here, now, your seed is not just a child, by the way, it's anything that you create. People don't understand that. And the deeper knowledge, what they tell you is when you want to wax strong, you abstain from all creation and focus on the only thing that you're attempting to create. And what I'm saying is that, let's say you're even just a book, you're building a plastic car, you are to refrain from that if you are actually pursuing at a certain point a high level of ascension from your spiritual knowledge. Because then all your creative force comes from one bucket. And now this gets distorted and then put into, you're just supposed to abstain from being around women and being monk. That's not what they said. What they said was sometimes it would take 2 to 3 months for you to go wax strong into another level of higher realization of self. And you would have to abstain from all forms of creation, whether it was copulation or creation through literature or whatever, because the creative bus needed to for your I think it sparks out this stuff, because really I feel like sometimes I'm talking to dead air because I'm on the radio. But when you have someone there to reflect with, that's the key to all of this. This is when I realize all is self together. That's the only way that it'll happen. By all means, it will happen, though. And those who don't want to come will be pulled along. They're used to being pulled anyway. People in reality are used to being pulled. So why don't we tell them what's right to do? Right? And then someone jumps up and says, oh, how do you know that? How do you know that you're right? Well, I know the people that's ruling over us right now are not. That's what I know. I don't even have to be knowing anything about myself and individually centered into myself to see what's going on in reality can be done better. I mean, even a fool could see that, and that's where most people begin. I started realizing it's something so much more expansive than our little dynamic of drama that we're having down here. It put the system into play and said, hey, just overcome. And I think that's what they always were telling us, our ancestors, overcome. Like, don't give up. Like, don't matter. You could take a break, but you'll still be here. So you might as well push forward now and then push forward together, because when you can't push at that last point, you'll find your brother and your sister can. You'll be able to assume more power and more light in numbers. You'll be brighter. You'll learn more about the spectrum. Learn from everyone and let them be your teacher, and know that you're only seeing a reflection of yourself. Never be selfish because you're holding up your own energy. All these principles, and then our world has laid them to waste and it's killing us. And then they don't think that I will rise forth and summon all the strength in me to stop it, or they will have my heart. Like, that's the only thing that I really know. That's how I was trained, and that's what I feel like is a foundation that we can at least begin with. And that's why I say, look at it like the ancestors. Know at least where you are first before you start thinking about going somewhere. Like, you jump in like I always talk about, jump into a spaceship with some extraterrestrials speaking Enochian. Where are you going? Do you really know what they're talking about? Like, and then also the pretenders. Any firm communication with any other state of consciousness is fluid. You can't come to Mexico speaking only English and expect to fully communicate with the people. The only thing that you're going to have for them that they understand is $1. And so thus that's how the world's been communicating with all these other nations and people. They just show the $, and then that's all they need to say. Everyone else just nods their head yes, and that's the other only thing you need to know, and then that's full communication for most of these people. Meanwhile, back at the Batcave, we're sitting here trying to pull apart the human genome from the space through a cloudy sky. You see, look, we can't see the stars. Like, I can't even imagine the stars. I'd be like, looking at the stars, I'd be like, man, they may have used some kind of filter. That's not a filter for photographs, silly. That's how it really looks. Like, in Texas even, there's certain parts of the world that the stars appear completely different than in other parts of the world. I've noticed that, just like this guy was saying, it's not A, B, C. It's A, B, then it flips, like the centrifugal force, into another a number, let's say C, D, then it flips back to. You see what I mean? So it's not like a straight line. And because we're taught to think in a straight line, here's another thing. Close your eyes. No straight lines. Open them. Straight lines everywhere. Desks, pictures, walls, windows. Everything's a straight line. But when you close your eyes, there's no straight line. So this shows you right hand, straight line. Left hand, curve. So, but you got both. So anytime someone comes up to you from the left or right hand path boasting that they know the truth, ask them. You see what I mean? That's what happens here. It's like we have to take what we know. Now, here's another thing. They say don't lean on man's understanding anymore, yet look in your body. Your navel is the center of you. Speak forth from that area. That is your sun. The sun is still the center of the universe, which is the sun is a symbol of the power center of the universe. But where is it? It's the crown chakra. No, it's not the crown chakra. You can't speak from that high level to those who are low. You have to speak from the center. Like, because you can't communicate if you're always polarized on one level or another. Always left-handed. So this is the thing. It's like I see this so clear. I see that it could be taught to people, but I'm also even beyond to actually bring forth the energy in order to solve the entire situation because there were things that the resistance factored in that most didn't. And I'll explain that. When you look deep, people, they just know about what they've been studying, but they act like they can only study one thing. So while they were studying, let's say, physics, they forgot about the Juggernaut and MK Ultra and the Jabberwocky. You see what I mean? So thus, when they talk, they only can talk about one particular dynamic of something. So what happens, though, is that when you want to instruct somebody from a center, meaning that they need to get all the knowledge like a university, then you have to be able to speak on all subjects so they know how to solve the situation. So this means if you choose to omit any part of the situation, when you choose to have the conversation, then you're choosing to be unbalanced and teach the individual that you're actually talking to imbalance, which is actually the worst thing you could do as an instructor, sending a ripple effect, pushing you back in time, like of things that you'll still have to correct. Like people don't know. Teachers, we're still here with you now. Meaning that sometimes a teacher commits to be with the student all the way through until you are able to pull your own load. Because the baby, you can't put the baby out the womb and tell the baby, all right, now you got to pay rent. Season before the child must go forth into the world to bear fruit. It's just now our fruits of our labors have to be examined because we have to keep eating them. So when we put forward these fruits of poison, these words of poison, these incomplete pentagrams, basically, look, I'm showing the key once again. Since the whole thing is wired down to the pentagram, if you spit forth an imperfect pentagram, you're bringing in distorted beings. You're basically doing necromancy. You're bringing old, dead ideas into a very live reality, killing it. So this is what gets corrected, but it will be when certain individuals, and those individuals are already alive and their ears are perked now, hear about the entire truth, receive the knowledge in itself to give them the full confirmation, and then seat within themselves, meaning that they actually will go back into their body rather than being outside, because that's where most, especially very intelligent individuals have been hanging out. It's outside of the body. And this, again, runs a parallel to that those who spend their time on earth and all their time on the ground without being able to fly are limited. And those who are able to break free the chains and the shackles that pull you down to earth. That's why they show the unicorn chained down to earth. That's gravity. You're the unicorn. So once unicorn, has wings on the back. So unicorn fly. And this is really a mare. But I've been a mare. And to fix that, then we bolt on the other component. So whether that be day or whether that be night for the individual, or like I said, whether it be yin or whether it be yang, we find out the balance for them.
I hear you, and I just wanted to just tag on to everything you said. So the full spectrum light is a perpetually phase conjugate aura.
Yes, it is. It will be the 7 colors with the black and the white on the outsides. And that's just how I visualize it as a full spectrum light. Like I got all of these guys here. See, when I talk about I bring them all with me as if I've already overcome the separation. That's how I visualize it. I was like, yeah, they're here too. Oh, you're the black one? Well, black's here too. Are you ready to do full spectrum? So this would be basically like if you had to go and talk to the demon, right? And then he's boasting and bragging his breath stinks. And you're like, look, your child is... and he's on your same biorhythm. So do you want to go into the next state of yourself and stop this whole separation thing? Or are you trying to hang around here for the next 26,532 years, like they were talking about on So the thing is that everyone has an opportunity, and that's why in the deeper knowledge you'll still find part of the truth there. And that's why when you look into the Arabic text, it says when these beings, when they hear the highest levels of knowledge, that they're even convinced. They're like them too, because they say the only reason is because they can reason. So this is what I'm saying. If the devil can think, he can be reasoned. You see what I mean? If anything can think, convince them to do anything. You just have to understand that. You see what I mean? So this is also with many of the negative forces that are refusing to see that it's a lot better to enjoy the positive collection of whole life. You see what I mean? But who is talking to them, though? Most people spend their time running from them. So now it's all charade. It's like a dog that tries to chase someone and they start running, and this dog is a coward. But now he's chasing everybody like he's just a ferocious wolf. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the story of the stars and the animals that exist there, also that you understand the origins of the people. And I guess that'll have to end up being another book when people understand why you can have blue eyes and hazel eyes and these kind of things, and what other animals show those traits. So I'm going to go ahead and get to some of these other questions, but we've got 5 more minutes left in the call.
Honest, man. Appreciate it. Always. Thank you. And well done, like I said.
All right, I appreciate it. Okay, caller from the 315 area code. We got about 5 more minutes left. We're going to try to get all questions answered. We got, I guess that you'll be the last call. So area code 315, wholeness.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just started listening to you, and I have gone back into the archives, and since I think June, and just within the last few days, and I'm in awe, and I wanted to give thanks and praises for the information that you're providing. And this is like stepping back into into the past where, as a child, I did have the ability to travel, through the flying, and boy, it was and to control dreams, and of course, going through the passage of adolescence and adulthood, and then just like I just went through this whole blinding. I just went through the whole spectrum you're fighting for us to understand. So, and I did receive the Chi Booster link. And how often? My question is, how often would you use that, or how often would you need it?
Excellent question. Excellent.
Go ahead.
Just to address that question right away, because that's something I definitely want to talk about in the conversation. Here's what I discovered. What I discovered is that what the gravity does is it basically crunches the back on top of itself. So at first, when you're using the Chi Booster, what's happening is it's moving your legs from side to side, and it's basically pulling out your spine. And what you'll also notice, I was using it as far as how much to use it, I would say only once a day at least for the first week. And the reason is because you'll feel your spine lengthen, but you'll also feel that your lower back is very weak. And this is because now that you've pulled out this muscle, it has to now hold up the back straight, which so that now that all the energy can flow. So that muscle takes about only 2 to 3 days to actually start gaining strength. And then from that point, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then you notice that your posture was way more upright.
Yeah. So it really would depend on the individual, how often, because I really feel like I have a strong back, and I understand the whole point of alignment and just lying on my back and just breathing, and I can feel the energy trying to realign itself, and I mean even to the eye socket, just feeling this energy just and through the brain where it's just like there's something inside just trying to realign itself. I don't know if it's because of my diet that's taking place or the state of the Earth's atmosphere at this time, but
well,
I still, and it's like reawakening coming, and trying to, because there are certain thoughts and words that just totally escape me at times, and then when I find myself trying to bring these ideas and thoughts back into the present, I'm finding that I didn't even need them, and that's the reason why they're just dissipating.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the association of what, like, for instance, a person's former name, and that association brings that person's face. And,
right.
and at a point where I don't, I'm trying to remember, I see the name, I see the face, and I can't remember the name because the name has been changed.
Right.
And the old name was it was a dead name. In other words, the name meant death. So the new name means life. That has been associated, if you can understand what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. I mean, just for two things. First, just to get the first question answered, what they do recommend, though, after, my little precaution is the Chi machine being used 3 times a day, if possible. In addition to that, what I will say is that, just as we were talking about last night, to look through the archives almost as if you're looking through a file cabinet that is very clear, the determination of that is exactly how much chi and prana is moving through your body and what region it has access to. Because remember, when you're seeing certain levels of the archives because you're using that particular eye or chakra on your body, normally the one that is the strongest. So when it's almost like bringing all the light online and then being able to send them into a particular point. So you're focusing on what you want to see more so than seeing things that may be just useless information to a certain extent, but not even useless, but information that, notice how if you go in and you get certain levels of information, let's say it's about death and it's about life, that information may not apply directly to what is going on right now in your physical reality in order to get you boosted into another level of yourself here. So being able to act about what can boost you to the next level here is definitely controlled by the Chi force, because you have basically the fuel or the thrust that's necessary to hold that thought or position of what you're attempting to access. I did also want to say that we only have about 90 seconds left in the call, just so that we just don't hang up. But
thank you for
calling in and definitely in that question. But again, there's plenty of details in that post about it. Of course, I'm going to look here in a moment about the stars, just so individuals understand the documents and things that I have to put forth on that. I want to say wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. I also, again, want to say thank you for those calls and calling in, and all the people who have been working at their stations, allowing us to get to more expansive levels of understanding self. So just in the tune of all is self, I want to say wholeness and balanced vibrations, and thank you for tuning into the 2012 show.